Welcome back, guys. Today I'm going to tell you about the Telos Backslash, which is one of the best powder boards I've ridden this season. More specifically, I got a chance to ride the limited edition carbon version, and I'm going to talk to you about whether this is the version to go for or the regular version. Let's do it. Sure, Telos are one of the newer brands on the market, but their founders have decades of experience in the snowboard manufacturing industry, and they've put these to good use in their lineup of boards. The boards are pretty innovative, you can expect some pretty interesting shapes, and so far the performance on them has been really good. In my humble opinion, the Backslash is the best board in their lineup, and the limited edition carbon version is even better. But whether it's the right board for you is yet to be seen. So, let's take a look at the features. Number one is, of course, the flex. Now, Telos put this at a 7 out of 10, which is exactly the same in both the regular and the carbon version. What I would say is that the carbon version is probably a touch stiffer at a 7.5 or an 8, but overall you're looking at that upper end of the medium stiff spectrum. Secondly, the shape, which is of course directional. You'll also notice that it's tapered in that the nose is wider than the tail, which means that in powder, you're gonna get better flotation and the tail's gonna have that added agility. It is of course also volume shifted, meaning that it's fatter and has a lot of volume underneath, so can be ridden shorter. So much so that this is the 148, which at 200 pounds is a hell of a lot shorter than I'm used to. I normally ride a 156 for all mountain, but this thing floated really well despite the shortened size because there's just so much volume underfoot. Number three, the profile, which is a setback camber with a long nose rocker. Now, that is a long way of saying that you have camber towards the back of the board, which is going to be used for pop and precision, whereas the front of the board has this long rockered nose, which as you can imagine is better for powder. I should have mentioned in the flex section that of course this nose is going to be softer than the back of the board, both due to the camber, but also just due to the flex pattern. And this makes it easier to keep the nose up out of deep powder, and it also provides the extra snap in the back for turn initiation and for pop. In terms of sizing, this board comes in a 148, a 153 and a 158, but if you go with the standard version of the Backslash instead of the limited edition, you can also get it in a 143. And in terms of the base, both boards are of course supplied with a sintered base, which is the exact same in the regular and the limited edition. In terms of other technology, both boards have an aluminium or aluminum tail protector, which is going to keep the board going for longer. They both use a paulownia wood core, which in the regular version has carbon stringers, but in the limited edition has aluminium stringers and the addition of their DFD technology. DFD stands for Dual Frequency Dampening, which is new to Telos for the 2023-2024 season. And why they've added this is that carbon quite often comes with excess chatter, particularly in longer noses. And to combat this, they've added D30 foam strategically along the core, and this mops up any of those micro vibrations that the aluminium stringers can't. And this prevents the chatter from being transmitted to your bindings and therefore your feet. Now, this sounds like a lot of tech jargon, but in practice, this certainly helped because it didn't have that typical chattery feel that you often find with carbon. First impressions of this board were that this thing is super light. And I know I said that about the Chillum, the all mountain variant, but actually this thing is one step above. I nearly threw it over my head when I got it out of the packet. Didn't really, but it is pretty light. This translated to a really nice, light, airy feel when slashing through powder, particularly helped by powder, for example, in Japan. But even then, this thing was a lightweight ripper. The regular model is certainly not heavy, but this thing is just that next touch above. You might think that the lightness therefore means it would lack response, but the carbon really does make sure that this thing still has plenty of pop. This is also helped by the fact that you've got this nice camber section towards the back of the board, which means you've got a really nice area to load up that traditional camber snap. And you've also got a nice camber section to engage with carves when you get this thing over on edge. The thing that surprised me about this board is that this thing is a carving machine, Particularly because of the added width, you can really lay it over, lay trenches, and not worry about, about your toes or your heels booting out. It's also got more tail than you might see on things like the Burton fish or the Rossignol sushi. So you do have enough tail to get a decent amount of ollie, you don't just have to jump. And this also means you've got enough tail for landings, so you're not gonna go over the back for every single time. Counteract some of the catchiness that you might have in a camber board, particularly in powder where you want to float. You've got this long rockered nose, which floated beautifully out in the deep stuff. It also made it slightly less hooky and meant you were less likely to catch an edge when messing around on the groomers. As you might expect, this long rockered nose did have a little bit of extra chatter, but their DFD system and the D30 core really did help. And compared to something like the Burton Mystery Fish, which carbon construction, this thing was definitely less chattery. And in powder, this thing is insane for nose butters because of this big, scooped out, rockered nose. Now, Telos say that this might be a daily driver board, something that you could ride anywhere. I would refute that a little bit. You can ride it anywhere, but really you're not going to choose this as your all-mountain deck unless you're not riding any park or any freestyle at all. You can obviously ride it switch, but it's still not going to be great compared to something a little bit less directional. It's therefore probably more of a board that you're going to add to your quiver rather than use as a quiver of one. But that's really not a bad thing because it's really, really good at what it's built for. When it comes to the downsides, I did notice that the carbon edition was a little bit less playful than the regular edition. Don't get me wrong, it's still super fun, but the regular edition had a little bit less torsional flex, so you could be a bit lazy, cruise around at slow speeds and turn with that front foot. Whereas this thing is a little bit less forgiving and likes to be going faster and ridden a bit harder. This means that if you're stuck between this board and the regular Backslash, I would say if you are a dedicated powder rider, you're gonna be riding hard and fast and you want that extra response, then go for this board. But if you want a little bit more of an all-rounder, a little bit more mellow, then the regular Backslash is still an incredible board. If you do decide to go for this board, make sure to buy from the Telos website in the description below, so you're supporting the brand. But also make sure to check their size guide because they generally run a little bit differently to most brands. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you didn't, let me know in the comments below. If you've got any other questions, then keep them to yourself. Joking, let me know in the comments below. And if you did find it helpful, then like, comment and subscribe because it would really help me to see your faces again. Bye.